Welcome to the Champaign-Urbana Jewish Federation Holocaust Education Center podcast series. Today we're joined by Carrie Franke, a dedicated advocate for historical education and remembrance. As a representative of the Champaign-Urbana Jewish Federation Holocaust Education Center and a member of the University of Illinois community, Carrie plays a key role in promoting Holocaust education throughout the region. Her work involves organizing educational programs, collaborating with local schools and community organizations, and ensuring that the stories and lessons of the Holocaust are preserved for future generations. In a world that too often forgets, and we will get into this in a minute, Carrie has made it her life's mission to remember and to teach others to do the same. Carrie, it is such an honor to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. It's an honor for me to be with you. Thank you, Elizabeth.
To start, can you share initially what drew you as a devout Christian to Holocaust education and remembrance work?
I think it would begin before I became a Christian in grad school here at the University of Illinois. And I was studying discrimination in education and in the town and gown, Champaign-Urbana. And I studied discrimination against African Americans. Surprise, surprise, what I found out was when the community from World War II to Martin Luther King, that was my time period, when the community discriminated against African Americans, they discriminated against the Jewish people as well. So I started taking courses on the Holocaust and took a Yiddish course and things like that. And as I was working on my doctorate, so then I became a Christian in 1990, and I read my Bible from cover to cover several times, just making up for lost time and finding out the whole thing's about Israel. And it was thrilling. But another theme that runs from beginning to end is the suffering of the Jewish people, God's great love for them, but also the suffering. So then now I'm a Christian, I've read my Bible, I've studied discrimination, and then I go to Israel. And of course, every tour group stops at Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Museum and Remembrance Center in Jerusalem. My eyes were opened, and I recall back when I was studying abroad in the 70s, when I was an undergrad student, I had gone to Dachau. And it's because everyone goes to Dachau. It's in Bavaria, and we were down there, and we went to the castle, and I was horrified. But then things started coming together. Of course, we didn't have Holocaust education growing up or anything like that. I'm in my mid-60s. It started like that. And once I went to the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, and my first trip of 43 trips to Israel, 43, I just couldn't get enough of learning. And so I read all kinds of Jewish literature, Yiddish stuff, historical novels, and history of the Holocaust and just Judaism. And it was a whole sphere of interest that opened up just so I could be closer to Israel, because my heart is in Israel. I missed Israel. So I was back in the land within a few months of being there the first time, and then continued to go. But it was a way to be close to Israel, be close to the Jewish people, and learn more about the suffering and how the worst of how human beings can behave toward each other. But then also the cream rises to the top, and survivor stories, learning from survivors, and it greatly inspired me. I will read survivor story after survivor story because, if you're having a bad day, just read a survivor story. It puts everything in perspective. That's kind of a long answer with a little odyssey in the middle of it, but it's personal, it's special, and it's a really important part of my life.
Let's talk about Yad Vashem. You didn't just visit there, you served at the desk. What was that position about, and what did you learn from it?
Yad Vashem, it's the mothership of all Holocaust study in the whole wide world and all museums. Yad Vashem is the place, and it's such an important place. They found that Christians were coming to Israel, and so they'd go to the museum, and they needed to find a way. They thought, you know what? Let's hire a Christian director to greet Christian groups and to put things in perspective. And so after they exit the museum, to meet with the group outside in little pretty coves and stuff, and to talk about righteous among the nations and so forth and so on. So they had to get permission from the Knesset to have a Christian office there. I met the director of the Christian desk and I said, could I volunteer? And she said, oh, she just started. I'll look into it. And turns out I was her first volunteer. And it was my 50th birthday. And so I got 50 days in Jerusalem to volunteer at Yad Vashem and to take a Hebrew Upan and spend 50 days. And I was spreading the word that this is what I get to do. And a Jewish friend said, you're going to stay in my apartment. I'm not using it. And you're going to stay there free. That was in 2008. And so I volunteered at Yad Vashem. What did I do? As Christian groups came in, I would greet them and tell them what they're about to see and what they should look for. And if they have time, go to certain exhibits. And I would ask them questions. They'd have like an assignment to go in. And then as they came out, it takes 2 hours, I would greet them at the end and talk about their experience. And a lot of tears, a lot of hugs, a lot of, since I'm a Christian, they're Christians, we prayed together. We would sing songs together, It Is Well With My Soul, and songs like that. And I did that with the groups. I also worked with the Righteous Among the Nations, which are the rescuers. And so if families would come, Jewish families or Christian families would come from all over the world, they want to see their tree because Yad Vashem would plant a tree in honor of every person who saved Jewish lives. There's 23,000 now, and so there's enough trees. And so there's a valley, a garden, and there's plaques organized by country and by year. And so you can find the name of the rescuer. And I remember one Italian couple came through. I don't speak Italian. They hardly spoke English, but we found the name and they just broke down. They fell down on the ground. They're Christians. They fell down on the ground weeping. They found their uncle's name, who had risked his life in Italy to save Jewish lives. And so that was another thing I did. I documented stories of the righteous among the nations and doctored up the English. I organized the files and things like that. But I did that several summers. Whenever I'd go to town, I'd volunteer for 3-5 days a week at Yad Vashem. Just do whatever they want me to do.
You didn't just volunteer there. You also volunteered at Auschwitz. Tell me a little bit about the timeline. You visited Dachau, you were at Yad Vashem. When did you decide, not only am I going to visit Auschwitz, what exactly did you do there?
Well, the first time I went to Auschwitz, it was in 2010 or 2011. I went with my church in Jerusalem, and my pastor there is passionate about taking Christians to the death camps, the places of Jewish life, the synagogues that are now turned into coffee shops in Poland, the forests where the mass graves were. That was a 12-day trip in 2010, I believe, or 2011. And that was the first time I was at Auschwitz. Very difficult. Second time I went to Auschwitz, I was representing U.S. Christians, and I went with a survivor group. Yad Vashem organized a Jewish survivor group, and they're first gen and second gen survivors. I thought, I need to come alongside to know that Christians love them and care and want to show up and experience. And just your presence. I'm an introvert and I can hold my own with chit chat and stuff, but this is one of my messages. Just show up. Okay, you don't know what to do. You don't know what to say. Just show up and it unfolds for you. So when I went with the survivors, it was an amazing experience. And then I became, for the first time, a Shabbos Goy because we were there over Shabbat. okay, load me up with all your books and stuff, and I'll open your room key, and that was a delightful part. That was fun. Oh, all these dear ones, just what are you doing here? I'm with you. I just want to be with you and show you that Christians care. I'm representing US Christians. That was the second time I was there. Then there came a time, and this is something else I learned in life along the way. I was unemployed for a long time and trying to make ends meet. And I took odd jobs and I ate. I was fine. I made ends meet. I thought, okay, let's better myself. So I took some online courses with Yad Vashem. And they're really good, by the way. I recommend them. And one course that I was taking during this time was on monuments and remembrance centers in Europe and when they came about and how they came about and all the controversies around a Holocaust monument, and they came late. You would think they would spring up right after the war. No, these came in the 80s, in the 90s. So I was taking this course and I had to do research on the Auschwitz-Birkenau website, and it was Good Friday and I was fasting. That's a holy day for me. So I was on the website and let's look around, and I saw they had a volunteer tab. I clicked on, I'm like, who would volunteer at Auschwitz? And I saw the departments and I'm like, oh my goodness. I closed my computer, went for a run, went to Good Friday service. And at the service, he's preaching on God's love. And I'm sitting in the congregation and I replay over and over in my mind, you can volunteer at Auschwitz. You can volunteer at Auschwitz. Not you ought to or you must, you can. So I called my Polish friends. I have Polish friends. I called them in Poland. I have no money because I'm unemployed. I waited a long, long time and finally I was accepted. And I told my friends, Christian friends, I had no money. I thought, okay, now how am I going to fund this? And a friend told me, don't you open your mouth, just see what happens. And I got 3 checks for $5,000 each without asking for a cent. And these were for Christians. Carrie, we can't go there. You represent us. So I had enough money and I went and lived in Oswestime and took the bus in to the museum every morning with other Poles going to work, and then worked in the conservation department. Auschwitz-Birkenau is a museum, but it also houses evidence of crimes against humanity. And so you have to preserve this evidence. When I got there, I found out, oh, no wonder it took a long time. I'm the only American that has volunteered. I was older. Most of the volunteers are young, 20-something Europeans. So they gave me things to do that a mature person could handle. And they found out that, okay, so I started working with the bedding. And at one time in Auschwitz, they had gunny sacks, like full of straw for bedding. Then they did away with that. There's too many people to. I was taking straw out of gunny sacks. Another task was to put away the uniforms, the striped garments, and put them in acid-free boxes. There's a way to fold them and put the paper in there, and they're stored in regulated preservation places. And Auschwitz-Birkenau, they lend to museums all over the world or exhibits all over the world. And it's like a library. So they check them out, then they come back in. And I would check in the artifacts and make sure they came in exactly as it photographs. There's cards, I held in my hands primary source documents. January 27th, 1945 is when Auschwitz was liberated. I held the book in my hands, handwritten, that recorded every living person that was still in the camp. Now, the death camps, they took the people that could barely walk and they were trying to get them out of there. And they left the ones that were, oh, they're going to die anyway. Well, these people were still alive. I saw their names, I saw their numbers, but their names. When you're in Auschwitz, you're just a number. I saw their names. I saw where they were born and I saw their number. I saw what day in transport they came in on. We needed to digitize it. But the main thing they gave me to do, I was preserving suitcases and valises. You got to understand, SS will take them, or the people who work for the capos and stuff that work for the SS, they just slash them open looking for valuables in the linings, diamonds, money. Our job was to preserve it, not to patch it up. Preserving and conserving is different than renovation, It all built up. The main thing I did was help preserve the shoes. I worked with some men's, but mainly women's and children's shoes. There's millions of them. This is after the German Nazis shipping off millions of shoes back to the fatherland because they're all suffering in Germany. They have no food, they have no clothes. So they're taking the Jewish clothing and shoes and shipping it back to Germany. But what was left there when Auschwitz was liberated by the Soviets on January 27th was this mountain of shoes. I started in and did the tasks required for each individual shoe. I couldn't put earbuds in and listen to music. I mainly focused on each shoe and who would have been wearing it. Oh, it says Warsaw on the instep. It's Warsaw. This lady's from Warsaw, or at least she went shopping there. Or this is a slipper. This dear one was taken in the middle of the night. Or this is a sandal, a summer sandal. She was taken in the summertime. It's a job that's kind of monotonous. It's one after another, after another, after another. But each shoe represents a person. And I felt like I told God, this is my blessing on her. It's suitable for a non-Jewish to take care of her shoe, a non-Jewish person, because there is love and there is redemption and there is healing, and I want to extend my love. And so the last thing that she had on, her shoes, I took care of. And then the little one's shoes, it's very hard because normally it would be the mother or the older sister who would have the little ones in arms and right to the gas chamber. No work, no tattoo. Anyone holding a little one goes straight to the gas chamber or went. But some of the little one's shoes were tied together. The mother tied them together. Most of the time I worked alone. If they brought another intern in or a volunteer in, I would train them. And that was one of the dearest things I was privileged to do. And like some of the shoes were falling apart, not because they were old, but because of the use. Maybe she was trudging around in the mud or nails poking up, because these were cobbled, in those days. They're not like shoes today. Each different individual shoe, or, a red one or a tan one, or she bought this for a party, or, when you go shoe shopping, you know what you want when you go shoe shopping. It's special because you don't have that many shoes. And these are things that went through my mind as I took care of the shoes and blessed them and just gave it as just like a little love offering to God and to people who would come to the museum. So when you go to see the shoes, I've held them in my hands and touched them and loved on them, and they're not forsaken. They're covered with love.
When you came home and you retell this story to your congregation, you are not just a historian, you are a woman of faith. How do you tie all of that together and impart the incredible sensitivity of somebody who may never have learned about the Holocaust, of what you witnessed and what you felt decades after it happened?
I just tell stories like this. I kept a blog. I learned how to do it when I was in Jerusalem before I flew to Warsaw. So I kept a blog 4 days a week, and that helped me process. And so they were short, some were a little longer, but I used those essays to help me put a story together when I'd go to churches. The first church I told my story, I said to pastor in Jerusalem, I said, do you think anyone would be interested in this? Yes. So we set up a time in Jerusalem at my church. It was wall to wall, standing room only, Christians and Jewish together. And that's what's so special. What I've been privileged to do, because I was unemployed, was of interest to Christians and Jews and Israelis and secular. And that was the first place I gave back, was in Jerusalem. And then I came home and told the story. People will hold dinner parties and invite me, and I'll be the speaker and give that. Or there's educational organizations, I give the story, or I've given the story in Christian colleges and universities. And it depends on what aspect of the story. I find out who the audience is and then tailor make the story, because there's so much. There's so much.
Do you feel that it's your responsibility as a Christian and as a historian in order to help combat anti Semitism? Do you feel that's one of your callings?
It is one of my callings. And I liked how you put it in the introduction, an advocate for historical education and remembrance. I love that description. That's mainly who I am. And then when I'm with Christian audiences, telling them how much God loves the Jewish people and the plan he has for them, and they're the apple of his eye, and take them through the scriptures and show them, so it increases their knowledge of Judaism and Jewishness in God's plan, but also, I was just doing research for a course and saw that there was a volunteer department. And so applied. Just take a risk and just show up. And then things unfold.
Do you think your message to other faith leaders of all denominations is to listen, to speak up, to be an advocate? What are the words that you would like your fellow followers of God, of Jesus, what do you want them to do?
Judeo-Christian, Judeo is first, then Christian. So remember that, Christians. There are Christians who are gung-ho, who love Israel, love the Jewish people, and want to be with them, and let's be together. I kind of say time out and then give them the history of anti-Semitism through the ages. They don't know any of that. I didn't know any of it until I started working at Yad Vashem and Auschwitz and learning it. And then I was taking courses on how to teach it. And the longest form of anti-Semitism is Christian anti-Semitism. It's over 2,000 years old. And that is a talk that I give in many, many places. And what that talk does is bring in a level of humility. And oh my goodness, no wonder our Jewish friends are like, thank you for your love, but it's a delicate relationship because of the history. That's one of the messages I bring, is the history. The church dropped the ball, but we can't undo 2,000 years, but we can change things now.
You may have just answered this question, or maybe not. When people have debates on the ugliest period in world history, American slavery, which you obviously studied, or the Holocaust, or both, there's no hierarchy of that. What would you say?
I don't know the answer to that, actually. Yeah, the Holocaust, both were horrendous. How can people devise these things to do to each other? What I learned is that the Holocaust didn't start with this hatred. It was ramping up for centuries. There are beloved theologians who gave Hitler all the words he needed, all the permission, all the blessing he needed to do what he did. And it starts in the mind. It starts with the ideas, and then people find ways to implement them. And you've got to nip it in the bud with the idea. We have to be vigilant. If we see something wrong, to stand in the breach and let the chips fall where they may. Do what's right, get involved, show up, just stand alongside. Things will be found for you to do. And in your sphere of influence, so say someone loves to be on Facebook and they're addicted to Facebook, use Facebook to spread the good word with things about Israel or positive things or things about events. Bill Gingold's going to speak somewhere, a Holocaust survivor, or use what you love to do in the privacy of your own home and do it there. There's something everyone can do. We need to vote the right way, as long as we can still vote and not take voting for granted. When you study history, you can see what human beings are capable of, and you see how things ramp up to that, and you see the warning signs. You just have to be vigilant. And also, for people who know God, prayer changes things. And I used to think before I was a Christian that, well, it helps a person sort out their thoughts and have peace. I've seen too many amazing answers. I got into Auschwitz. That was an incredible answer to prayer. Not only did I get in, but without asking for money, I had way more money than I needed to live there. That's just one example. But yeah, we need to be vigilant.
If somebody is inspired by your story or they want you to come talk to their congregation or their classroom, what's the best way to reach out to you or to get in touch with you?
Maybe it would be better Holocaust Education Center, and they can track me down. I'm Carrie Franke. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. Carrie Franke, Franke. And it would be my privilege. I don't charge. It's my privilege to come in and talk. And I can tailor make it for whatever age group. The Holocaust is a difficult topic. You have to be very careful, but there's ways to present it.
You mentioned privilege. It has been my privilege to have this conversation with you. Your journey reminds us remembrance is not bound by religion or background, but by shared humanity. You have been listening to the Champaign-Urbana Jewish Federation Holocaust Education Center podcast series. Carrie Franke, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Elizabeth.